Picture a woolly mammoth charging toward you, 13 feet tall at the shoulder, 9 tons of muscle and tusk, moving faster than you can run, and all you have in your hands is a wooden shaft with a chipped piece of stone tied to the end. That shouldn't be a fair fight, and for decades, archaeologists genuinely weren't sure it was one. The story starts in 1929 when an amateur archaeologist exploring a dried-up stream bed near Clovis, New Mexico, stumbled onto something remarkable: chiseled stone points scattered among mammoth fossils. Researchers called them Clovis points, and for most of the 20th century, the assumption was simple: ancient humans threw these spears at mammoths and killed them. Then archaeologist Meetin Aaron ran the actual math, and the weapon failed the test. The force a human arm can generate turned out to be far smaller than what's needed to drive a stone point through a mammoth's thick hide and fat deep enough to kill it. Out of more than 10,000 Clovis points recovered across North America, not one has ever been found embedded in the bone of a mammoth. Aaron's team even re-examined the most famous supposed proof of a kill, a mammoth found at Naco, Arizona in 1952, with 8 Clovis points around it, treated for 70 years as the textbook example. Under closer study, those points showed no impact fractures, only the kind of light tip damage you'd expect from a point simply resting in hide, not punching through it. Modern elephants have survived for years with bullets and spear tips lodged in them. Something ending up inside an animal doesn't prove it's what killed the animal. Not everyone agrees. Archaeologist David Kilby and his colleagues pushed back hard, arguing the damage patterns on points from other kill sites are exactly what you'd expect from real hunting weapons, not butchering tools. This isn't settled archaeology. It's a live argument fought out over the same 100-year-old bones between researchers looking at identical evidence and reaching opposite conclusions. Here's the obvious next question in that argument. Sure, a bare hand-thrown spear seems weak, but what about the Atlatl, the leverage-based spear thrower, long credited with letting Clovis hunters launch darts at nearly 80 miles an hour? For decades, that's exactly what closed the gap in everyone's mind. Then, just weeks ago, a new chronological analysis of every dated Atlatl component ever found in North America concluded there's no solid evidence the tool existed on the continent during the Clovis period at all. It likely didn't arrive for thousands of years after Clovis culture had already ended. If that holds up, it removes the one weapon everyone assumed had solved this problem, leaving these hunters facing mammoths with exactly the same underpowered, hand-thrown options Aaron had already shown. Didn't work. So if neither a thrown spear nor an Atlatl dart could reliably do the job, how were mammoths actually being killed, assuming they were hunted and not simply found already dead? One recent theory reframes the whole problem, because everyone had been assuming the human arm had to supply all the killing force. The idea, drawn from historical accounts of similar weapons used against large animals in cultures around the world, is that Clovis hunters braced the base of a long spear against the ground, angled it upward, and let the mammoth do the rest. A charging animal running into a fixed angled point drives the spear into its own body, using the force of its full charge, an amount of energy, an order of magnitude greater than anything a human arm alone could produce. It's the same principle behind the pikes ancient Greek soldiers planted against charging cavalry. The hunter's skill wasn't strength. It was standing at exactly the right spot and angle while the animal did the rest. That single idea also explains the lack of impact damage Aaron found at Naco. A planted pike doesn't leave the same fracture pattern a thrown spear does, because the animal impales itself under its own momentum rather than absorbing force a human threw. And with the Atlatl now apparently missing from this specific place and time, planted spears look less like one option among several and more like the most plausible explanation left standing, even if Kilby and others would still argue the case for genuine thrown hunting isn't closed. That underlying question connects to something buried in human bones rather than mammoth ones. Scientists can now read what a person ate thousands of years after their death by measuring the chemical signature nitrogen leaves behind in bone, and mammoth tissue carries a signature distinct enough from other Ice Age animals to identify. That analysis shows some of the earliest modern humans in southeastern Europe ate mammoth meat as a dietary staple. It doesn't settle whether the meat came from a planted pike kill or a scavenged carcass, but it confirms the stakes of the whole debate. Whichever method they used, mammoth wasn't an occasional meal, which is exactly why getting the method right and safely mattered so much, and the method wasn't uniform everywhere. At two major mammoth sites in Central Europe, Milovis in the Czech Republic and Kraków Spadzista in Poland, hunters used noticeably different sizes and styles of points, adapting to local terrain and herd behavior, rather than following one universal approach, and even changing their toolkit as shifting climate made mammoth migration routes and herd sizes less predictable. The Clovis Atlatl question is really a story about one specific culture in one specific place. Elsewhere in the world, spear throwers go back much further, with evidence in Europe and Asia stretching to roughly 17 or 20,000 years ago. So the tool itself isn't in question, only whether these particular hunters facing these particular animals ever actually had one in hand. So here's where the evidence leaves us. As of research published within the last month, thrown spears almost certainly weren't strong enough on their own. The Atlatl, the tool assumed to make up the difference, may not have even existed yet for these hunters. Planted braced spears, using the animal's own charge as the killing force, are the best current explanation for how something this size was brought down with Ice Age technology, though not everyone in the field agrees. And in at least some cases, humans may not have needed to kill a mammoth at all, simply reaching one that had already died first. The mammoth went extinct 13,000 years ago. The argument over exactly how our ancestors dealt with one, thrown, planted, missing a key weapon entirely or simply found, is still being fought out in journals today over the same bones excavated 70 years ago, with the newest piece of this puzzle published only weeks before this was written.